He is jealous for me. He loves like a hurricane, and I am a tree. I'm bending beneath the weight of his wind and mercy. And all of a sudden, I am unaware of these afflictions eclipsed by glory. And I realize just how beautiful you are and how great your affections are for me. And oh, how he loves us so. Oh, how he loves us. How he loves us so. And he is jealous for me. Love's like a hurricane, I am a tree, and I'm bending beneath the weight of his wind and mercy. When all of a sudden I am unaware of these afflictions eclipsed by glory. And I realize just how beautiful you are and how great your affections are for me. And oh, how he loves us so. Oh, how he loves us. How he loves us so. How he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves. We are his portion, and he is our prize. I'm drawn to redemption by the grace in his eyes. If his grace is an ocean, we're all sinking. So heaven meets earth like a sloppy wet kiss, and my heart turns violently inside of my chest. I don't have time to maintain these regrets when I think about the way that he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves. How he loves.
so close. Because the devil's walking in my soul, and all I really wanna know is you can hear me. Is it you can hear me? Can you hear me? You hear me? You hear me? Because the devil's walking in my soul.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to yet another week. We are continuing in our series, Can You Hear Me Now?, where we're talking all about how to hear Jesus, how to talk to God and be in a conversational relationship with Him. And so the last couple of weeks we've talked about, well, what about when I can't hear God? It feels like I can't hear God. We talked about it's important to have a place to go to and gave you some pointers of how to best hear God. And last week we talked about the awkwardness of silence, because a lot of us just don't like silence. It makes us feel weird. We're not used to silence. So this week we want to talk about something else. But first, Tanner, how are you doing, man? You feeling okay? Like, we're going on week 10,000 of quarantine. Like, it feels like it. Like,
No,
how
for
are you
sure.
doing? How are you feeling?
Dude, I'm like, I don't know about you, but there's just been a lot of distracted, I guess is a good word. But I also know just frustrated. I just want to be back at youth group, things to
Right.
be normal. And it's just kind of, I'm just kind of over it.
Yeah, totally.
But I'm also, this has been a good opportunity to kind of look at things that, maybe I wouldn't have the opportunity to do it before. So,
Yeah, totally. I feel the same way, man. Just a lot of discouragement, a lot of frustration, just ready to be back. Which really, when we've talked about this leads us to what we're wanting to talk about this week. And I think this season is really just prime for what we're walking into is, in our conversations with God, what happens when we ask God something or ask God to do something and He does answer us? Like, maybe He's not silent like we talked about last week. He does answer us, but it's not the answer that we want, And what we're going to ask you to do today, guys, we're going to walk through this. We're going to share a little bit of our story. But I want you to think about something in your life. What is something either currently or in the past that you have prayed for, asked for, and maybe God did something that wasn't what you asked Him to do or wasn't what you wanted Him to do? Maybe He answered, but it wasn't the answer that you wanted, right? I think that's a tension that a lot of us feel. And for me, it was actually right when I came back from college. I was ready, man. I was ready to have a job. I was ready to take on the world. I was ready. I had a job lined up in Oklahoma City. It was ready to go. I met the guy who was going to hire me. He said he was going to hire me. All this great stuff was just lined up, man. Like, my life was figured out. Things were good. I was dating the girl that I thought I was going to marry. Like, it was great. And then within a month, we broke up. The job fell through. I was living in my parents' basement, making minimum wage at the hotel downtown,
Dang.
And I was just like, what? God, no. Like, this isn't what we had planned. Right? This isn't what we talked about. And I had that frustration. I think a lot of us may have said that whole, God, this isn't what we talked about, right? Is there a moment in your life that you can kind of pinpoint that you felt that too?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think, there was a moment in my life where I was a senior in high school, graduated. Things were, I think that was like my first year where my grades were great, because I was just a terrible student. And so I was excited about that. I was excited about the next season. And so I went and worked for Student Life Camp for a couple of years, and that was all going really well. And then I came back one summer, just really felt like I was supposed to, become a youth pastor. And so I applied for a bunch of different positions at different churches. And there was one church that I thought it was going to be the church. It just seemed like the perfect fit. All the interviews were going well. We were in the final stages. And then my answer was no. And I just remember for months I was applying, doing all these interviews, thinking this was the thing to do. And then I was left with no job. I had no money coming in. I was super broke. I had to move in with my grandparents. And so I didn't know what God was doing, and I felt very alone. I felt very like there was something missing. Was I making the right decisions? Did I miss something? Did God tell me and I didn't know? And I just remember feeling like what's the point? What am I supposed to do next? Kind of in that season. So.
Yeah. Well, in the midst of these seasons, when we don't get the answer we really want, there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of unknown, and it's just this tension of just being like, God, why did this happen? You know, and it's kind of like listen, in the first place, I hate puzzles. I hate them. I don't have the patience for puzzles. I am so glad that my wife doesn't do puzzles, because like, I don't know if I'd be good enough of a husband to like sit down and do puzzles with my wife. I hate it. Like when you have like 100 pieces that look the exact same, but you're supposed to.
Dude, I have a puzzle at home. So I'm a huge nerd, obviously. And I don't like puzzles either, but I got it for Christmas. So Allison's family is like all into puzzles. They love puzzles and all that kind of stuff. But they got me a Star Wars puzzle. But not only is it a Star Wars puzzle, it's like a puzzle of all the movie posters. So none of the pieces look like they go together at all. So it's like, I'm just like, nope, not doing it. Like, nope.
Just gonna keep it
leave it in the
closed.
box.
You could sell it for a lot of money someday or something
so
like that.
I get it.
Yeah, my puzzles are like the 6-piece puzzles that like toddlers get.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I can do those puzzles, but that's about it. But anyway, like, we'll come back to the middle. But like, as stressful as puzzles are for me, it feels like in the midst of these seasons, it's almost like God hands you one piece, right? One piece to the puzzle. And he's like, here you go. And you're sitting there and you're just like, okay, great. Like,
what do I do with this?
what do I do with this?
Yeah.
Like, or this isn't what I asked for. Like, cool, but I don't get it, right? I don't get it. And a lot of times these seasons can leave us in confusion, kind of like if we were to be handed one piece of a puzzle. And so what we want you guys to do, as we journey through this message and we look at some other stories of individuals who feel the same way, I want you to take whatever that is in your life. What is that puzzle piece that God has put in your life that you feel like is just a question that didn't get answered, or it got answered, but it's not the answer that you want? What is that moment in your life? Take that puzzle piece and hold it in front of you this whole time. You don't have to like physically hold your hand up the whole time because that would be awful, but hold it in front of you and think about it as we go through this journey together. But before we go any further, let's watch a couple stories that talk about the same thing.
So growing up, my grandparents have this apple tree in their backyard, and my grandma would always bring apples when she visited us, and she would sit down with me and my brother and any of my cousins that were there, and we'd make apple pie together. And she was just this like light that always, like, her house was always full of people. There were no less than 15 people every time we were there. She was this beacon of light, and she brought in people and she saved people. It felt like she was such joy and such kindness. And then one day during my senior year of high school, she went in the hospital for routine heart surgery, and something went wrong. I don't really know what went wrong, but she was in a coma, and my dad flew out as soon as he found out because they told him it was really bad and they didn't know what would happen. And about 2 days later, my dad told my mom that we should all come up and get ready to say our goodbyes. And so on a Sunday after church, we all packed up in the car, and my mom drove 14 hours by herself and took us all up to North Dakota to visit my grandma in the hospital. And we stayed for about a week and stayed in the ICU every day in the waiting room, just seeing if anything changed, seeing if anything got better. And eventually, after about a week, she was just stable enough that we thought, it's not over yet. There's a good chance that things could get better and things could be okay. So we packed up, we went home, and then a few days later, she was awake and she was talking and she was walking around, and we had been praying so hard for this. We had all of the people I knew at church praying, all of my grandma's church praying, my family, people who have not prayed for years were praying that she would come through, and it felt like we suddenly had this answer right in front of us. She woke up, she was talking and walking, and things were better. And we were so excited that she was okay. And then, so she woke up on a Friday, and the following Tuesday I went to school and something felt wrong. And I got home from school, and my parents sat me down and told me that she had passed away that morning. And I didn't understand, because we had prayed so much, and everyone I knew was praying that she'd be okay, and then she was okay, and I didn't understand why God would take her. And so we drove back up. It was about a month after the first time, after her surgery, and we went to her funeral. She had been okay just a week earlier, and then we were at her funeral with all of our family and with all of her friends, with this huge church full of people who loved her and needed her. And I couldn't understand why Jesus answered my prayers like this. Why did he take her so soon? She was gonna miss my birthday, my graduation, my siblings' birthdays. She used to write us birthday cards every year, and I wasn't gonna get one this year. And so I was just left wondering what kind of God would do this? What kind of God would take my grandma from me? What kind of God would take this woman who so many people needed? What kind of an answer to a prayer was that?
So I can think of quite a few times in my life when God didn't answer me the way I thought he would or the way that I wanted. Or sometimes not at all. But one of the most memorable times for me is before I left for Iraq, I found out that I'm going to be a dad. And some of you guys might actually know him. His name is Gabriel. So I was in Iraq for about 6 months. And I was in line to use the internet. And my commander came up to me and said, "Hey, I hear you're having a kid." I said, "Yeah." And he said, "The most important call sign I think that's in the Army is dad." So it was great to hear. He said, when I get home, the first thing he's going to do is he's going to be a dad. And he promised me that I'd be there to see his birth. The next day on the way back to Fallujah, they killed him. So I didn't know if that promise was going to be held. So I got a new commander and let him know, this promise was made, I want to be there when he's born. And they said, yeah, you'll go. So I was on the Jordanian border. I've already got got word that the helicopter's coming to pick me up. I'm going to go home. He's going to be born in a month. His due date's December 2nd. This is November 2nd. I get everything packed, ready to go. And my platoon sergeant comes up and says, "Put your bags back on the tank." I was heartbroken. I'm not going. No, I have to go. I just fought and fought. No, I'm going. I have to go. They promised. Everybody promised. I have to go. To me, it felt like the promise to me can't be kept. And I missed it. So nobody knew that I wasn't even coming home. The last they knew, I was coming home. And I was pissed. I was pissed at God. I was pissed at all my leaders. I was just pissed. So, that to me felt like betrayal from God. That my firstborn, I'm gonna be a new dad. I'm a young kid, and one of the things I prayed for my whole life was just to be a dad, and I'm missing it. And it felt like he betrayed me.
So there you have it. Kayla and Dave got to share a part of their stories where they felt this tension too. And so hopefully all of us can kind of be on the same playing field now of we've all experienced this in one way or another. And remember, hold that puzzle piece in front of you. Whatever this situation is for you, hold that in front of you as we talk. Tanner, as we talked about this, you had a story that came to mind for you. Would you walk us through that story and real quick?
Yeah, for sure. So if you guys have your Bibles, go ahead and grab them. We're going to be in Jonah, Jonah chapter 4. And this kind of came to mind. I think I hate to admit this, but I find a lot of myself in Jonah with just how he deals with talking with God. And just a little context, because we're kind of at the tail end of this story. But Jonah, he was sent by God to go talk to Nineveh, which was this place, and he hated them. Like there was like a lot of tension, a lot of hate between his people and Nineveh. And so he's like runs away from God, wants nothing to do with God. Because it's not his plan. So basically what's happening is his plan has been blown up, and God's been like, hey, I need you to do this. And so he's like, nope, I don't want to do it. And so I think we find ourselves in chapter 4 kind of seeing God kind of, he helps Nineveh. He like redeems them, and Jonah wants him to destroy them, like to get rid of them. That's what Jonah's plan is. And then we kind of see his response when maybe the answer doesn't go the way he thought it was going to be. And I just find it really interesting. But starting in verse 1, it says this. This change of plans greatly upset Jonah, which I just want to stop there for a second. Like already he's upset. Like we haven't even gotten into like what he's saying. Like he's like, just because it's changed, like he's already upset. But continuing, he said he became very angry. So he complained to the Lord about it. Didn't I say before I left home that you would do this? This is why I ran away to Tarshish. I knew that you were merciful and compassionate, slow to get angry, and filled with love. Like he's getting angry at God for being loving, like for being loving and caring, like because he doesn't want that for his plan. Like I just think that's so ridiculous. But then it says, you are eager to turn back from destroying these people, but just kill me now, Lord. I would rather be dead than alive. And here's the important part, because what I predicted will not happen. And like I don't know, like when I read that, like, and I hate to admit it, but I see a lot of myself in this story as well. But Jonah's in this place where he has a plan. It's obviously very structured. And then God kind of comes into that and is like, hey, I need you to do this for me. It's actually better than your plan, but you need to trust me. And instead of trusting God, Jonah does this thing where he's like, yeah, but you're not giving me any details. You're kind of just giving me that one puzzle piece without any, with showing me anything else. And so he runs away. He wants nothing to do with the peace that God gave him. And then we see here at the end, he would rather die than have his plan be destroyed.
Totally.
And have it be different than all the little things.
Yeah.
And you think to yourself, that's extreme, but how many of us, we're in the same place, right? We have our plans very structured. This is how I'm going to go through school. These are my grades. This is where I'm going to go to college eventually. I think a lot of time we have it very, very planned out. And I think that's why something like COVID-19 and these things that are very unexpected, I don't know about you, but I start to freak out and go what the heck, God? This wasn't in my plan. So.
Yeah, no, totally. And that's crazy. But we can read that story and be like, Jonah, you're being dramatic, right? But what happens when we do look at our own story? Because I remember in that season, I told you, I knew what my job was going to be. Mm-hmm. I knew the person I was going to be with. I knew, everything was mapped out. And literally 0% of it happened, right? Yeah. And I was just like, this isn't what we had planned. Forget it, know? And I was angry, and I had the same attitude that Jonah had, where I was just over it, and I was just like, whatever, I'll just be, I really had a pity party, but I'm like, I'll just be making minimum wage at the ambulance for the rest of my life, whatever, I was being dramatic too, and it's just easy to look at these stories and just be like, let's stop being dramatic. But if we look at our stories, we're probably not reacting a lot better.
No, for sure. No, I saw that in my story too. I think when I applied for that church, and I thought that was the church. I felt so good about it. I was like, yeah, this is where I'm going to work. And it didn't happen, and I was left without a job and stuff. I just remember being having that instinct of, you know what? Well, then maybe I'm never supposed to go into ministry. And so it's just kind of why is that my reaction? That seems so dramatic, but really when we compare it, you were saying, it's not much different. I think many of us, this is a natural way to react for us.
Totally. Yeah, so I want to compare this real quick with another story. Yeah. In the Old Testament, a story that, it's one of my favorite stories in the Bible. I love it. It's in Daniel chapter 3, and it's about these three guys named Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these guys, so they're in Babylon under the rule of King Nebuchadnezzar. Mm-hmm. This guy, super full of himself, builds this huge statue of himself, and he's like, hey, it's the law. When you hear all my musicians play, you have to bow down to it. It's okay, cool, Nebi, you're super full of yourself, bro. But so anyway, they build this statue, and all the instruments play, and they're like, hey, everybody bow down. Well, 3 guys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they don't do it. So these guys go and tell King Nebi, they're like, hey, these dudes won't bow down.
Yeah.
And the punishment is you'll get thrown into a fiery furnace, okay? And so they know this. They know the threat that's at hand, but they still don't bow down. And so King Nebuchadnezzar calls for these guys. And I just want to read this part of their response to King Nebuchadnezzar. I love it. I had our middle schoolers one time, and for those of you middle schoolers that are watching, you'll remember this. I read this at camp, and I had them, every time that they sound like they burned, like roasted King Nebuchadnezzar, to be like, oh! So like keep that in mind as we read this. So in Daniel chapter 3, starting in verse 16, it says this, it says, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If this be so, that you're going to throw us in the fiery furnace, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. Now, this is the verse that I want to focus on. But if not, so if he doesn't, be it known to you, O king, that we will never serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. Like, that's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Because if you think, I'm not trying to dog on Jonah here, but Jonah would probably be like, fiery furnace? Yeah, no thanks. Whatever, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, who knows what he would have done in this situation. But they say that not only do they have this crazy faith where they say our God is able to save us, and not only is he able to, he will save us. But they say, even if he doesn't, we are not going to serve you. Even if he doesn't answer our prayer the way we want him to, we're not going to bow down to you. You know, and I just think that's crazy. Like, what if we started praying like that? What if we started praying like, God, here's what I'm feeling, here's what I'm thinking, like please don't let this happen, right? Or please let this happen. But then what if we followed it up with like, but you know what? If it doesn't work out how I want it, I trust you.
Yeah.
You know? And I think another crazy thing about this, if we keep reading, they actually get thrown into the fiery furnace, right? But they come out of it, like they don't get touched by the fire.
Yeah.
What I think is significant about that is it's, even when they're talking about deliverance, that's probably not how they expected it to happen. I'm assuming that they expected to never be thrown in, right? They're like, yeah, our God will deliver us. He can keep us from being thrown in the fire. And it's cool because God's almost like, I'll do you one more, you know? I'll raise you, you know? Not only you'll get thrown in, but then I'm going to save you, and I'm going to do even more than you can even ask or imagine, which is biblical. I will do more than you can even ask or even fathom. And so like their faith paid off to where like they're probably assuming, oh, we won't get thrown in, but then they do, and God still comes through and still saves them out of the furnace. And it says they don't even get touched by the flames, right? Like that's crazy. And so, you know, we see these two different levels of different reactions of an answer not going the way you want it, right? Two people being dealt this puzzle piece, and one of them being like, you know what, I don't like it, I'm not about it, and the other one being like, all right, God, let's see what you can do with this.
Yeah.
So the stories that we shared earlier, Dave and Kaylee, they actually kind of share some resolution, like where are they now in that part of their story? So let's go back to these videos and let's see how these stories have progressed.
After my grandma died, I didn't know where Jesus was. And there was a long period of time where I felt like he didn't answer my prayers and that he was mean and unkind and not the Jesus I wanted to follow. But the truth was, in that time, that he showed me who my community was. He put people in my path to love me well, to care for me, to see me, and to hold me when I was hurting the most. I had family members who I didn't know how to talk to, who I finally could hug and cry with, and I had friends who had previously lost parents and grandparents who knew what to say, and honestly, most of the time, not to say anything at all. And now I've had the ability to love other people through their losses, through their hurts, and to just say, look, I can't say that I know exactly how you feel, but I can say that you're not alone. And so I still don't know why that was her time to go. I still don't understand why that's how Jesus would have answered that prayer. But I can see that he did. And I had been feeling so alone and so lost. And he showed me people that have been lifelong friends and have been lifelong confidants and people who have cared for me so deeply through so many different things in my life. And I think if all of that hadn't have happened, I think I would have kept going and kept thinking I was alone when that wasn't true.
Obviously, I couldn't disobey orders, and I was in the middle of Iraq in the desert. What am I going to do? Where am I going to go? I have to do what I have to do. So I put my bags on the tank, ended up going to the Syrian border, and we invaded a town in Syria. So what I didn't know was the helicopter that I was supposed to get on. It picked up someone from Signal and was flying over Fallujah and got shot down and killed 16 people. So I guess what I missed there was when I felt betrayed, my life was saved. And I made it home to my son. I didn't just miss his birth, I get to see his whole life. And other people took my spot on that helicopter to come home and see their family and didn't make it home to see their family. And my life was spared, and every day of my life, I have to live it for those people that don't get to be with their family. And I look for the answer. But I'm grateful that I'm here with my beautiful boys. A lot of them now, not just the one. And that I didn't get on the helicopter. And I made it home.
Man, how crazy is that? Like, I mean, I love that we have people who are willing to share their stories, but it's crazy what God ends up doing, right? Mm-hmm. And I just want to finish up with one more story. I want to finish up with the story of Jesus.
Yeah.
Because I think a part of his story that we overlook, we talk a lot about his death, we talk a lot about his resurrection and what he did for us, but a lot of times we don't really look at what happened before. And so before this happened, Jesus goes to the Garden of Gethsemane, and he brings some of his disciples with him, and he goes there to pray. Now this is right before he gets betrayed and arrested, before he gets tortured, before he gets killed, all this stuff. We're going to be in Luke chapter 22, and we're just going to read verse 42. Just a quick thing. We're going to look at what Jesus prays. See, I think a lot of us are just like, man, Jesus he came, he died, he did what he had to do.
Yeah.
But I think this verse is really, this is like the pinnacle example of what we're talking about. So Jesus goes to pray, and here's what he prayed. He says, Father, he's talking to God, he says, if you are willing, remove this cup from me. If you are willing, don't let what's about to happen.
Yeah.
You know, in other versions he says, if there's any other way, is there any other way that this can happen? Like, this is Jesus, right? He's like, listen, I'm asking you if there's another way, but what he says next is amazing. He says, nevertheless. So he says, if you are willing, remove this cup. Nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done. I don't want my will, I want your will to be done, no matter what happens out of it.
Yeah.
And Jesus knew what was about to happen to him. Here's the thing, man. What Jesus realized, see, he had this piece of the puzzle, right? But he knew that God could see the bigger picture. And like, what if we could see through the lens like Jesus did, right? If we had the trust that Jesus had. And I think what's significant in this is that when we have this piece of the puzzle, right, we see what's now, but God sees what's next. He sees the whole picture. He sees the end result. He sees the end goal. Where we see one piece to the puzzle, God sees the whole picture that piece helps make, right? You know when you get to the end of a puzzle and you're missing a piece or two?
Yeah.
It's not the same, right? When we're missing the piece that God has put in our life right now, then we miss the entire picture of what God's trying to ultimately do in our life. I mean, how have you seen that play out in your story at all?
Yeah, so going back to the story that I shared earlier, you know, I was left in that season of no job, you know, confused. Am I supposed to even go through ministry? God, what is this puzzle piece you've even given me? Like, this seems like it's going nowhere. And so I kind of felt like a mess up and felt like I just wasn't amounting to anything. And but I remember my mentors telling me, keep praying, keep spending time with God. Like, he has something for you. And little did I know that I'd be interviewing with Discovery Church. And then out of all the places, like, you know, I remember I was working for Student Life, and that for some reason that church like stood out, and out of all these churches that were coming, and I loved getting to interact with the students that came, and I didn't get to see the big picture that God was using moments like that at camp, and moments, even moments I don't see now. Like, I have no idea what he did, but he knew what was next. He knew the big picture. He put the puzzle together for me. So when I put that last piece in, it was like, whoa, like, here it is. Like, that's the picture that I was missing. But I was so focused on that piece that I wasn't even like asking God what's next. I was just like, but right now I have nothing. But it's just so cool to see that when God brought that picture together, like, man, I wouldn't trade it for anything. I mean, we have like the greatest students in the world. They can be frustrating and annoying sometimes, but we have the greatest students in the world. So yeah, it's just so cool that, you know, God's picture for me has been ending up here at this place. So.
Totally. And it's so similar in mine, man. Like, I look back on that season, and man, I learned so much about who God was in that season. I didn't even realize I was learning, you know, and I ended up meeting my wife. I ended up at Discovery. You know, like, when we take time, we end up seeing what God's been doing all along. But it's so hard in that moment, right? When we just have that one puzzle piece, it is so hard. So guys, our encouragement for you, you know, whatever that puzzle piece is, like, we only see what's now, right? What's right in front of us, whatever's happening right now. Lord, why'd you make us move? Why'd you take those friends out of my life? Why did this thing happen to this thing? And I know there's a lot of hard things happening in your guys' lives. We have this one puzzle piece, but if we stopped looking at what's now and just said, okay, God, like, what's next? What's the next piece to make this beautiful picture that is ultimately going to be called my life, right? This beautiful thing that you're doing. I see what's happening right now, but what is next? Because God, you see that. So as we go into this time of worship, we're singing some songs that are just about trusting God and just surrendering to God. And so as we sing this, hold that in front of you and just say, all right, God, with this puzzle piece, I trust you. I trust that you know what's next. So as we go in this time, just hold that in front of you, spend some time with Jesus, and then we'd love to talk about that more on Zoom after this. So let's pray, and then we'll go into worship. So Jesus, Lord, we know at times it can be hard to hear. Maybe it's distractions, maybe it's a bunch of other things that get in our life. I don't know what it is, but Lord, would you draw near to us? And as we ask you, Lord, what's next? A lot of times what you say is, well, follow me and I'll show you. So Lord, would we follow you in this journey to just see what is next? Would we trust you with every piece of the puzzle that you are creating? Lord, would you be with you every step of the way, because we know that you are with us every step of the way. Lord, we love you and praise you. Amen.
All this pain, I wonder if I'll ever find my way. I wonder could a garden come up from this ground at all? You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of the dust. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us.
You call me out upon the waters, the great unknown, where feet may fail. And there I find you in the mystery, in oceans deep, my faith will stand. And I will call upon my soul will rest in your embrace, for I My feet may fail and fear surrounds me. Your sovereign hand will be my guide. My feet may fail and fear surrounds me. You've never failed and you won't start now. So I will call upon your name and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace. For I am yours, and you are mine. Oh. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. And take me deeper than my feet could ever wander. And my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. And I will call upon your name and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace. For I am yours, and you are mine.
All right, thanks, Caleb and Cass, for worship. That was awesome. So, hey, we have a couple announcements for you guys. First off, we have some sad news that Glorieta Summer Camp has officially been canceled this year. But please, 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 this is a great opportunity to keep in mind just what we just talked about. Although we're bummed about it, and Tanner and I are bummed about it, what could God be doing instead? Right? This isn't the answer we want. This isn't what the answer we were looking for. But God, what can you do with this instead? It's not the answer we wanted, but there is something that God wants to do. And so we can tell you this, that we are starting to work on an alternative plan for that. And so we can't tell you guys exactly what it is yet. We're still working on some pieces, but we want to make something happen still. All things considered, that we can get together and do something. So just know that we are working on something right now. We're working hard. We're interacting. We'll keep you guys updated as we can with what the next plan is. But stay encouraged and approach Jesus in this, in the craziness of this season, right? And at the end of the day, we're with you guys as well. Apart from that, guys, we're going to be hopping on Zoom right after this. So please hop on there. Talk with us, interact with us. We'd love to spend some time with you over there. Tanner, what do you guys have for middle school?
Yeah, so middle schoolers, just two things for you guys. So one, we are going to continue our Marvel superhero bracket. The semifinals are this week, so make sure you guys vote for whatever superhero you want. Let's have some fun with that. But also, every night this week, we're going to be doing Zoom Hangouts. We're going to have devotions, all that kind of stuff. I know that some days we do the Hangout, some days we do the devotion. This week, we're doing both every single day, so be looking for that in the evenings. Looking forward to hanging out with you guys, so invite your friends to those as well. So there's your announcements.
All right. Hey, love you guys. We'll see you on Zoom right after this. And hey, please follow our Instagram page for more announcements. We're going to be throwing out new stuff like crazy that we like so fast that sometimes we can't announce it on here. So please stay on our social media so you can see what we're doing, because we're trying to do a lot of really exciting stuff till we're back together. So see you guys on Zoom. Love you. Bye.
Bye.
You are father to the orphan, the defender of the weak, and you're the healer of the broken, and you are love, 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 and with all that I am and all that I have, I bring you my worship, honest and true. And may the words of my mouth and the song of my heart be a reflection of who you are. You are friend to the outcast,
bring you my worship, honest and true. And may the words of my mouth and the song of